Quite a few more cards have been revealed for Scholomance Academy, so it's time for another card review. This time, we get to see 4 legendaries, including the Headmaster of the Academy, 3 more dual class cards, and the first card of the set from the ever so hated class, Demon Hunter.
Huh, this should be interesting.
In the last video, we looked at the new mechanics for the set, Spell Burst, dual class cards, and studies. We won't be going in depth on those again, so check out the first review if you haven't yet. There should be a card up there somewhere. Now real quick, before we get into the reviews, let me note that we do card reviews a bit differently here. Rather than a 5-star rating for the cards, we ask the 3 questions Hearthstone players really want to know. First, would the card fit into one of the current meta decks, Tier 1 through Tier 3 decks per HS Replay's tier list? So is it meta now? We use this to gauge the card's power level a bit. Second, from what we know so far, even if it doesn't fit into a current meta deck, is it powerful enough to create or support a new meta archetype? So is it meta later? And third, most importantly to us, does it inspire or enable experimental or meme decks? So is it meme deck worthy? Each card will get a yes or no to these questions. There's a link to quick reviews with puns in the description below for those of you without much time. For everyone else, let's get into the main reviews. The first card we're looking at in this review is one we alluded to last time, Frazzled Freshman. She's a 1 mana 1/4 for Priest. There's no flavor text on this one, but 4 health on a 1-drop is pretty nice in a class looking to heal and buff its minions. Frazzled Freshman is a decent target for a quest priest, and she has a good chance of sticking to the board as a target for Apotheosis early on. So would she fit in any current meta priest decks? Res Priest doesn't want her in the res pool, and all the other meta decks run Disciple of Galakrond as their main 1-drop. Imprisoned Homunculus and Reliquary of Souls are just better 1-drops in the decks looking for more than one 1-drop. However, with this stat line for the cost, and the well-statted Spellburst Dragon we covered last time, there's a good chance that a buff Inner Fire Priest makes a comeback. We haven't seen Inner Fire Priest since Divine Spirit rotated, but I think it will carve itself a spot as a Tier 3 deck with the new tools available to Priest. So we're gonna call Frazzled Freshman a meta later card. And memes? Other than as a base for buffs, there's not really anything exciting about her. It might be funny to buff her up to a high health for an OTK after she sticks to the board, killing your opponent with a mere freshman, but that's not anything new or creative. So no meme decks will be looking to include her. Frazzled Freshman might seem like a failed student to the next card. Our first legendary for today is Disciplinarian Gandling, a 4 mana 3/6 minion for priests and warlocks. And his effect? After you play a minion, destroy it and summon a 4/4 failed student. Dark Pharaoh Takan, eat your heart out. So this is great in a deck with a bunch of cheap minions, preferably ones with death rattles you're happy to get right away. Warlock has a bunch of cards like that, and I'm sure we'll see Gandling in a few zoo decks. The reveal video showed the frightening synergy with Hand of Gul'dan being discarded by Expired Merchant, immediately returning copies to hand, and allowing Fiendish Servant to immediately buff another minion on the board, all while summoning extra 4/4 minions. Priest hasn't traditionally played a zoo style in Standard, but the old Quest Priest in Wild might be able to use him in interesting ways. I'm doubtful we'll see Priests in Standard use this much, but I am curious to see a shadowy figure copy a Grave Rune enchanted minion already on board with this get triggered immediately and watch the board get completely full. None of the current Priest decks would include this, and Quest and Galakrond Warlock don't have too many enticing targets for this. This destroys a bit of the synergy Zoo Warlock has with Magic Carpet at the moment, and negates buffs from Imprisoned Scrap Imp, as minions are guaranteed to transform into 4/4s. But as a legendary with a major upside in a deck with a bunch of 1-drops, I'm pretty sure this would find a slot in the deck. And when we can build decks with this in mind, this should increase the power level of Zoo Warlock quite a bit. I'm not sure if anything but Zoo will use it, but we should definitely see it in the upcoming meta. As for memes, this will fit very nicely into our how many reliquary primes can we summon priest deck as an immediate trigger for our shadowy figure. It also enables face priest with leper gnomes and kobold sand troopers to create some frightening burst damage. We're going to have a lot of fun experimenting with this disciplinarian. Another dual class card for priests and warlocks is Brittlebone Destroyer. He's a 4-mana 3/3 minion with a battle cry to destroy a minion if your hero's health changed this turn. This is a perfect card to synergize with both priest and warlock hero powers, as both can change your hero's health. While warlocks can do a couple things to damage themselves for 1 mana, and priests have renew, a lot of the time this is going to be a 6 mana play to get the battle cry. As essentially a 6 mana 3/3, it's pretty similar to Kel'Thuzad the Breaker for Warlock, but with a weaker battlecry. It can be played for just 4 mana in a pinch, but that'll feel pretty bad. The synergies with lifesteal and damage effects from minions surviving on board, such as Neverset Thrasher, create some interesting scenarios as well. Quest Warlock does currently run Kel'Thuzad, but once the quest is complete, they would have difficulty triggering this battlecry. This is a bit too slow for Zoo Warlock to use effectively as it's built right now, and Priest has a lot more efficient removal in their current meta decks. A 3/3 body with a removal effect is nice, and we could make an argument for including it in Highlander Priest, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't make the cut in any current meta decks. That being said, this is a pretty interesting card with a lot of potential. Together with Apotheosis in a buff Inner Fire Priest, or a slower build of Zoo Warlock, maybe even together with Disciplinarian Gandling we covered a moment ago, there's a good chance Brittlebone Destroyer can make its way into the new meta. For a similar effect and likely cost, Siphon Soul hasn't made the cut in meta decks for a while, but getting a 3/3 minion is generally better than healing for 3. While a bit questionable, I think it will find a home in the new meta. We could use this card in a super heal Wall Priest, or as a relatively efficient removal in a Pain Warlock meme deck, but Brittlebone Destroyer doesn't really enable any new or unusual decks. Priest and Warlock don't have ways to double their battle cries, and I'm not sure this would allow you to target a second minion in Wild with Bran, but that'd be interesting to try. So there's not a broken way to use this card. Sadly, no meme deck options are coming to mind with this guy. Another card available to Warlocks which may have some interesting synergy with Disciplinarian Gandling is Boneweb Egg. It's a 2-mana 0/2 minion with a Death Rattle to summon 2 2/1 spiders. If this gets discarded, the Death Rattle will trigger. So a 2-mana egg to summon 2 2/1 minions isn't very exciting, especially when compared with Serpent Egg, which summons a 3/4 minion, which doesn't see play outside of Egg Warrior. Serpent Egg did make some lists a while back as a target for Evil Genius, but that's completely gone from the meta. As a minion to pair with Disciplinarian Gandling, it does provide a fair bit of stats on the board at once, but without him on the board already, this feels pretty weak. So this is only appealing if it can be discarded reliably. In Standard, the only targeted discards are Expired Merchant and Nightshade Matron, but they both trigger your highest cost cards. At 2 mana, this isn't likely to be your highest cost card. Without a new card like Shriek or Reckless Dire Troll from Rastikon's Rumble, this won't be strong enough to survive in the meta, current or future. If more cards that could synergize with this, like Disciplinarian Gandling, are announced, this might spawn its way into the new meta, but its chances at the moment look grim. But in a discard, Disciplinarian Gandling, Dark Pharaoh Takan, Evil Genius, Egg Warlock meme deck, we can and will use this. At least this will see play at some point. Now, let's look at a much better Death Rattle minion. Infiltrator Lillian is a 4-mana 4/2 legendary minion for rogues with stealth and a Death Rattle to summon a 4/2 Forsaken Lillian that attacks a random enemy. She has stealth synergies, Death Rattle synergies, and she can pack quite a punch the turn after you play her. Since she's got stealth, your opponent will have to use a board clear if they want to remove her early, and she'll get to punch one of their minions or their face right away if they do. That means she may get to attack again the next turn if the random enemy didn't kill her. A 4 mana 8/4 seems pretty good, especially if we can use Greyheart Sage to draw with her. The main meta deck that would consider running Lillian at the moment is Galakrond Stealth Rogue, but as it's built at the moment, the only stealth minions are 1 and 2 mana cards, looking to curve into Greyheart Sage and draw a bunch of cheap cards for Questing Adventurer to grow massive. Sadly, I don't think she'd make the cut in the deck as it's currently built. However, she looks pretty aggressive with 8 damage across 2 bodies, and aside from Plague of Death, she's guaranteed to get at least 4 damage in. I wouldn't be surprised if an alternative Stealth Rogue or a Tempo Rogue develops to use her effectively. I really do think she has a good chance of earning a spot in the upcoming meta. And a meme deck that we built a little while ago was one to fill the board with permanently stealthed Akama Primes. What if we were to add or replace Infiltrator Lillian into that deck? With Shadow of Death's help, can you imagine a board full of Infiltrator Lillians threatening our opponent? If they use a board clear, a spray of Forsaken Lillians will skip across the board to take out any minions and bash their face. If they don't clear her, we can still get extra attacks from any minions they have on board, or just hit them in the face for 28. It'll be fun to see what we can do with her. Next up is a minion that might help a more aggressive style of rogue and warrior to develop extra threats on the board. Steel Dancer is a 4 mana 4/4 rogue and warrior dual class minion with a battle cry to summon a random minion with cost equal to your weapon's attack. When first looking at this card, I wasn't too impressed, as warrior isn't likely to get particularly high cost minions from it after the nerf to Corsair Cash. So other than in a specialty deck with Gorehowl, you're not getting more than a 2 or 3 mana minion outside of Pirate Warrior. However, Waggle Pick for rogues is still in standard. When Hooked Scimitar came out, there were some pretty aggressive builds of Tempo Rogue that used Hooked Scimitar and Waggle Pick really effectively. Drop a Deadly Poison on one of Rogue's weapons, and Steel Dancer suddenly looks a lot more powerful. But more likely, getting an additional 3-drop with Steel Dancer on curve would be the way Tempo Rogue would use this. So are Infiltrator Lillian and this enough to revive Tempo Rogue? Maybe. What about the current meta? The only deck I could see running this at the moment is Pirate Warrior. They have plenty of weapons and weapon buffs to make Steel Dancer summon an extra medium cost minion, but they would have to sacrifice one of their 1-drops or a pirate to fit in. With the synergies in the deck, I can't see them sacrificing any pirates, and while a 4/4 plus another minion is appealing, I think the reduction in likelihood of dropping a turn 1 minion would hurt the win rate more than the additional mid-game pressure. Just barely, but Steel Dancer doesn't make the cut for a current meta deck. But with the possibility of Tempo Rogue re-emerging, or a more mid-range version of Pirate Warrior developing, there's a decent chance Steel Dancer cuts her way into the new meta. She may need a bit of help, but the reveals have just begun. I'm gonna bet on her getting the last bit of support she needs to make it into the new meta. As for memes, it might be interesting to build a Waggle Pick rogue with deadly poisons to summon a few 8-drops with her. If we stick one of the Waggle Picks for a turn, double buffing the Waggle Pick, playing Steel Dancer, shadow stepping and replaying her could provide quite the interesting turn. And if we want the battle cry off of one of the 8-drops, we just swing the weapon for a chance to get it in hand, or get her back for 2 mana less. In Quest Rogue, we can pretty consistently get an additional 3 mana minion, and Gorehowl plus upgrade in Warrior might be interesting with this as well. There are a lot of meme deck possibilities. These next 2 cards are trying to take Warrior in a very different direction than Pirate Warrior. First, we have Troublemaker, an 8 mana 6/8 minion which summons 2 3/3 ruffians at the end of each of your turns, and those ruffians immediately attack random enemies. So, since he's guaranteed to summon 2 3/3 minions on his first turn, and they're guaranteed to hit something, maybe even face, before being cleared, this is an 8 mana 12/14 with an upside. In a big minion warrior looking to cheat out value with Boom Reaver or Dimensional Ripper, this guy looks like amazing value. At the moment, All the warrior decks that have earned a spot in the meta are aggressive, or they use Deathwing, Mad Aspect, and Hellscream as their top-end finishers. Troublemaker could probably provide some impressive value to the decks, but he doesn't match their game plan. However, there is a powerful Dimensional Ripper deck that uses Bulwark of Azzinoth and board clears to stall until the late game. With this guy's help, I think that deck has a good chance of climbing into the meta. As a way to clean up the board, or just as a way to exert extra pressure, I think Troublemaker will see play in at least one meta deck. If the Dimensional Ripper deck does become meta rather than a meme, it may be a challenge to build a meme deck around this guy. Drakari Enchanter in Wild will go nicely with this guy, but nothing in Standard screams synergy at the moment. If only Frothing Berserker kept track of minions taking damage while he's dormant from Maiev, we could use this to build him up a bit extra. I want to build something fun with this guy, in addition to Ripper Warrior, but I'm not seeing anything right now. Let me know in the comments if you have a meme deck idea with this guy. The other warrior card that will fit nicely into Big Warrior is Rattlegore. Rattlegore is a 9-mana 9/9 with a death rattle to resummon itself with -1/-1 in stats. And then again, and again, and again, until it finally dies one last time as a 1/1. So this is a 9-mana 45/45 over the course of the game. That is, unless it gets silenced or transformed. At 9 mana, this is really expensive without taunt, so it's difficult to drop on its own. Sadly, it's too expensive to pair with Sun Fury Protector, but it could gain Rush with a bit of help from Rocket Og Merchant. Yeah, honestly, Big Minion Dimensional Ripper Warrior is the only deck this has any real chance of succeeding in. Rattlegore is way too slow for any current meta decks, and even if Big Minion Ripper Warrior does earn a spot in the new meta, this will probably get cut from the deck as it doesn't provide any immediate impact without taunt, rush, or end of turn attacking minions. However, we will build Ripper Warrior meme decks with this, and we'll run some experiments with this and Rocket Og Merchant. We also really should combine this with Bloodsworn Mercenary to truly overwhelm our opponent that's slow enough to let us develop an insane, nearly unkillable board. It'll be fun. Now to look at the first card from the class you've all been waiting for, Demon Hunter. Their first card is Cycle of Hatred, a 7-mana spell to deal 3 damage to all minions and summon a 3/3 spirit for every minion killed. Wait, a semi-balanced card for Demon Hunter? Well, I guess it'll never see play then. Now, this will summon a 3/3 spirit for any minions of your own you kill as well. There's a bit of synergy with Feast of Souls available because of that. Also, pairing this with Moarg Artificer, Thalnos, or Ethereal Og Merchant makes the board clear do more damage and guarantees at least 1 spirit at the end of it. The only Demon Hunters still in the top 3 tiers at the moment are Tempo Demon Hunter and Token Demon Hunter. Neither of those would choose to include this. One form of Demon Hunter that might consider using this, but doesn't quite have a spot in the current meta, is Control Demon Hunter. They run a number of board clears and already make use of Moarg Artificer. If Demon Hunter gets a few more tools for a control deck, or a Highlander deck, this could feasibly earn a slot. But this just seems too balanced, or weak, for Demon Hunter to run in the future meta either. However, when we do venture into meme decks with Demon Hunter, this will be a card to try out. Dropping a coordinated strike before using Cycle of Hatred will guarantee us at least 3 3/3s after the dust settles. Probably more. And indeed, we can use this to cycle through our deck and clear the board, swinging things quite hard with the help of a free Moarg Artificer reduced in cost by a Raging Fellscreamer or Skull of Gul'dan, and Feast of Souls. Perhaps we can cycle for Chef Nomi again while building a massive Nethrondimus? We'll see. But there's decent meme potential with this card. Another card that can really benefit from spell damage or Moarg Artificer is this spell for mages. Combustion is a 3-mana spell to deal 4 damage to a minion, with any excess damage hitting both neighbors. So if your opponent is running a Hinge Clan Hag for some reason, you've got the perfect clear. This is like a super miniaturized meteor at half the cost. If Tempo Demon Hunter does persist in the new meta, this will take out a few Satyr Overseers and Battle Fiends. The flexibility to deal 4 damage to a single minion for 3 mana, or hit a couple minions for more with spell damage, providing an even juicier upside, makes this card look rather appealing. The flexibility and early removal potential of this card makes me think that Highlander Mage and No Minion Mage would both look at throwing this in place of one of their popular cards. And we haven't seen much for Mage from the new expansion yet, but if there are any more spell damage cards printed that look good for Mage, it may join those decks too. But Highlander Mage with this should continue to make a big impact on ladder. So, do we build a Kirin Tor, Tricaster, spell damage synergy deck with Combustion? Maybe. But just because we need spell damage to make this any more interesting doesn't earn this a spot as a meme deck worthy card. If this did anything above and beyond a little extra board damage for whatever we could do with it, that might earn it meme status, but there's not anything exciting about it. No memes for you. Kel'Thuzad returns, and opponents had better pray for mercy. Headmaster Kel'Thuzad is a 5-mana, 4/6 neutral legendary with a spell burst effect, which reads, if the spell destroys any minions, summon them. The trailer announcing this card by Amazing LP was, well, amazing. I definitely recommend watching it if you haven't. In that, they played Kel'Thuzad and then Brawl. Kel'Thuzad won the Brawl, and summoned all the minions that died onto his side of the board. However, since Spellburst has been confirmed as an after a spell is cast effect, if he dies to whatever spell destroys other minions, nothing new will be summoned. So using Twisting Nether, Brawl, Earthquake, etc. will not get you any new minions. But this does work with cards like Shadow Word Ruin, Shadow Word Death, and Shadow Word Pain. So it's a priest card. I mean, Hunter can use this with Deadly Shot for a guaranteed minion, which will probably end up being a lackey. Or rogues could use Assassinate as their own version of the priest mind control, though any death rattle would go off. I mean, for 9 mana and Zephyrus, any class can steal a minion from their opponent, unless it has 4 attack. Yeah, this looks to be a priest card thus far. Conjurer's Calling and Mage might also be interesting though. So, would Headmaster Kel'Thuzad earn a slot in any current meta decks? Highlander Dragon Mage runs Fireball, Conjurer's Calling, and Flame Strike as decent ways to get value from this, but I don't think they would bother slotting it in. Galakrond Priest, Cube Priest, and Highlander Priest all run Shadow Word Death, Time Rip, and Soul Mirror, which would get decent value out of this. Cube Priest might actually consider running him to improve their mid to late game swing power. They also have potential to get extra value out of him with Grave Rune after using the Spell Burst, as the copies from the Death Rattle will have fresh Spell Bursts available. Maybe meta now. And there will be a meta deck or two on ladder, even if it is just Priest, that figures out how to use Kel'Thuzad in a broken way. Perhaps with a card yet to be revealed? Whatever the case, Kel'Thuzad will join a meta deck in the upcoming expansion. So what's the most broken, meme-ish way we can imagine using Headmaster Kel'Thuzad? Well, intentionally ignoring the initial spell burst to cast Grave Rune on him, then copying him with Psyche Split, and stealing all our opponent's stuff for the rest of the game with Priest removal seems pretty evil. That's one meme to try out when we hate ourselves. Also, Conjurer's Calling on a Scrapyard Colossus in our big minion mage might be interesting. We would already flood the board with 5 minions, so we don't even need Khadgar to make it a stupidly massive board. Rogue will have some fun options as well. We'll be experimenting quite a bit with Kel'Thuzad. So what if we need a turn to get Headmaster Kel'Thuzad ready to pull off his spell burst? Do we have any way to stall? Yes. Sort of. Our next card is Cult Neophyte, a 2-mana 3/2 neutral minion with a battle cry to make your opponent's spells cost 1 more next turn. She's an aggressively statted mini Lotheb, except that Lotheb increased the cost of enemy spells by 5, whereas this only increases them by 1, which is much, much much weaker. If you're aiming to stop your opponent from using a particular board clear or combo, this has to be timed perfectly to have any impact. The only decks that I could see running this would be wide board aggro decks aiming to keep their opponent from using a board clear to take out their board. But the most aggressive decks in the current meta, Murloc Paladin, Totem Shaman, Face Hunter, Pirate Warrior, and Zoo Warlock, would shun this card as it has no synergy with their game plan, and they're better off risking a board clear and forcing a reload than running a card this situational. While this can mess up the Druid Exotic Mount Seller turn a bit, unless the latter gets completely overrun by them, it's not worth running this as a tech card. So this isn't meta now, and unless a really powerful and consistent combo deck requiring exactly 10 mana with spells develops, this won't see play in the future meta either. In Rogue, we could play Cult Neophyte and bounce it twice with Shadow Steps to make it half as good as Lotheb at the cost of 3 cards. But why? Quest Shaman could use this to increase the cost of spells by 2 next turn, but again, why? It's not worth it. Cult Neophyte fails to inspire memes either. Our last card for today is, well, a first. First Day of School is a 0 mana spell for paladins to add 2 random 1-cost minions to your hand. Until Aldor Attendant got buffed down to 1 mana, pure paladins were really struggling due to the lack of good 1-drops. There are quite a few mediocre 1 mana minions, but the ability to generate 2 of them in hand with a single card for 0 mana? That's pretty good. And sometimes you'll get an additional Aldor Attendant or a Blazing Battle Mage as a high roll. Murloc Paladin doesn't want this, but Pure Paladin probably would be happy to replace Imprisoned Sungil with this. So yes, this would be a meta now card. As for the future meta, we haven't seen anything else for Paladins yet except Goody 2-Shields, which doesn't point us in any new directions for Paladin yet. However, unless another good 1-drop is printed that Pure Paladins can use, this should see play in Pure Paladin. And with this card, perhaps we build a Brazen Zealot Righteous Cause Zoo buff Paladin? If a few more cheap mechs are printed that Paladins have access to, we'll definitely try it out. This may be the only meme direction we can take with this card, but it still qualifies as an enabler, so yeah, meme on. And now for the quick reviews. Frazzled Freshman is too frazzled to find any current meta decks. Might motivate Inner Fire Priest to rejoin the meta, but she is missing the class needed to join meme decks. Disciplinarian Gambling has all of the creatures at the zoo tamed in the current and future meta, and he's looking forward to see if his Face Priest meme deck students fail or not. Brittlebone Destroyer wouldn't destroy anything with current meta decks, but he might break his way into a new meta deck, and sadly his bones don't provide the framework for any meme decks to build on. Boneweb Egg is unlikely to hatch in the current or future meta without some serious support, but it may spawn a genius discard meme deck. Infiltrator Lillian couldn't infiltrate current forms of Stealth Galakrond Rogue, but she shouldn't be forsaken in the new meta, and opponents to meme decks with her will feel a shadow of death approaching. Steel Dancer can't appeal to the pirates quite enough in the current meta, but we're betting she'll be able to steal a spotlight in the upcoming meta, and meme decks will provide a great stage for her to show off her skills. Troublemaker couldn't make any trouble with current meta decks, but he'll rough up the new meta with big minion Ripper Warrior. But if Ripper Warrior is meta, there may not be any memes left for this guy. Rattlegore rattles from the sidelines of the current and future meta decks, but our meme decks will resummon so many extra Rattlegores that opponents will want to quit the game. Cycle of Hatred will not contribute towards the Cycle of Hatred directed at Demon Hunters in the current or future metas, but could provide quite a feast of souls for Nithrandimus in meme decks. Combustion will burn away opponents' boards in the current and future metas, but fails to ignite any meme decks. Headmaster Kel'Thuzad only inspires Cube Priest in the current meta, but he should summon a spot in a few more decks in the future meta, and he'll colossally destroy opponents in meme decks. Cult Neophyte is so inexperienced with spell cost increases that no current or future meta decks, or even meme decks are willing to give her a chance. Pure Paladin is completely prepared to make the first day of school a great experience in the current and future metas. And a Zoo buff Paladin meme deck is eager to throw some unsuspecting 1-drops into the fray. And that's a wrap. We'll be looking at more cards from Scholomance Academy in future reviews, so drop a like if you enjoyed, and smash that subscribe button so you'll know when the next video comes out. You're awesome. Thank you for watching, and have an awesome day.
Hail to thee, O Scholomance, the magic school of yore, your legacy of lore.